The crimson sunrise painted the Wyoming sky as Zara Griffith hurried along the muddy streets of Medicine Bow, clutching a basket of bread and preserves close to her chest. Spring of 1878 had arrived with promises of renewal, but for Zara, each dawn brought only mounting anxiety. The townsfolk's stares followed her like shadows. Once a respected schoolteacher, now branded a troublemaker for a crime she couldn't regret. "There she goes again," whispered Mrs. Thornton from the general store porch, loud enough for Zara to hear. "Feeding those vagrant children when decent folk need help." Zara quickened her pace, her blue calico dress swishing around her ankles. At 24, she had expected to be married with children of her own by now, not ostracized by the very community she had dedicated her life to serving. But everything had changed 3 months ago when the orphaned Thompson children arrived in Medicine Bow, dirty and starving after their parents died of fever on the trail west. The town council had decreed the children should be separated and sent to neighboring communities. When Zara protested and secretly began sheltering them in the abandoned miller's cottage at the edge of town, she lost her teaching position. Now she survived on meager savings and whatever mending work the few sympathetic townsfolk offered. A horse's whinny caught her attention. Turning, she glimpsed a tall figure dismounting outside the sheriff's office, a stranger with broad shoulders and a worn leather vest. She didn't linger to study him. The children would be hungry. The miller's cottage appeared ahead, its stone chimney crumbling but still functional. Smoke curled into the morning air. Billy must have gotten the fire going. At 12, he had become the protective older brother to 6-year-old twins Emma and Eliza, and 8-year-old Jack. "Miss Griffith," Emma called, running from the cottage with her blonde braids flying. "We were worried you wouldn't come today." Zara knelt to embrace the child. "I'll always come, sweet one. I've brought breakfast." Inside, the other children gathered around the rough wooden table. The cottage was sparse but clean, with a cast iron stove, 3 straw mattresses, and a few crates repurposed as chairs. Zara had done her best to make it habitable, but winter had been brutal, and spring brought new challenges. "The town meeting is today," Billy said quietly as she sliced bread. "I heard Mr. Porter talking. They're going to make us leave, aren't they?" Zara forced a smile. "Don't you worry about adult business. We'll figure something out." But her heart sank. The town council, led by the influential rancher Wallace Hemsley, had made their intentions clear. The children were a burden Medicine Bow couldn't afford, and Zara's defiance was setting a dangerous precedent. Today's meeting would likely seal their fate. After breakfast, she left the children with mending work and reading lessons, promising to return by noon. She needed to visit the general store for supplies while most folks would be at church, avoiding the judgmental stares. The bell above the door jingled as she entered Dawson's general store. Mrs. Dawson, one of the few who still treated Zara kindly, offered a sympathetic smile from behind the counter. "Morning, Zara. How are those little ones doing?" "Surviving, Mrs. Dawson, though I don't know for how much longer." Mrs. Dawson leaned forward. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but Mr. Hemsley has convinced the council to send for the orphan train agent from Denver. They're planning to ship those children east within the fortnight." The news hit Zara like a physical blow. The orphan trains were notorious children shipped to unknown families, often separated forever, sometimes ending up as little more than indentured servants. "They can't do that," she whispered, though she knew they could. "There's something else," Mrs. Dawson added, glancing toward the door. "There's a newcomer in town, Preston Foster. Bought the old Mac Gregor place south of town. Been asking about you." Zara frowned. "About me? Why would he?" The door swung open, and Zara turned to see the same broad-shouldered stranger she'd glimpsed earlier. Up close, she noticed his eyes first clear blue beneath the brim of a well-worn hat. His face was tanned and weathered, but he couldn't be much past 30. The silver star on his vest caught the light. "Miss Griffith." His voice was deep with a hint of Texas drawl. "I'm Preston Foster. I believe we need to talk." "If you've come about the town council's decision, Mr. Foster, I have nothing to say," Zara replied, gathering her purchases. "Those children deserve better than being shipped off like cattle." To her surprise, a smile crossed his face, softening the lines around his eyes. "That's exactly what I want to discuss, madam. But perhaps somewhere more private than Dawson's fine establishment. Curiosity overrode caution." She nodded stiffly and followed him outside, clutching her parcels against her chest like armor. They walked in silence to the small park near the church, empty now with the service underway. Preston Foster removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his temples. "I understand you've been caring for the Thompson children against the town council's wishes," he said without preamble. "If you're here to enforce their decision, Mr. Foster, I'm the new deputy marshal," he interrupted gently. "But I'm not here on official business. I know what it's like to be an orphan, Miss Griffith. I was one myself." The admission caught her off guard. She studied his face more carefully, noting the sincerity in his expression. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Foster? First, I'd like to meet these children. Then, I have an idea that might help us all if you're willing to hear it." "Us." The word hung between them. Preston nodded. "I bought the MacGregor Ranch with plans to raise horses. It's a good property, plenty of room, solid house that needs some work. What those children need is a proper home, not to be shipped east to strangers." Hope flickered in Zara's chest, but she tamped it down. "The council won't allow it. They've made their position clear." "The council might reconsider if the children had proper guardians," Preston said carefully. "A respectable married couple, for instance." Zara stared at him, comprehension dawning. "Mr. Foster, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, we've only just met." A faint blush colored his tan cheeks. "I'm not proposing marriage, Miss Griffith, at least not a real one. What I'm proposing is an arrangement, a partnership to help those children. We could present ourselves as engaged, soon to be married. It would buy us time to find a better solution." Zara's mind raced. It was improper, even scandalous, but she was already an outcast. What more could she lose? "And if it meant protecting the children? Why would you do this? You don't know me or these children." Preston's eyes darkened with memory. "I was 10 when my parents died in a flash flood in Texas. The family that took me in wanted free labor, not a son. No child deserves that fate if it can be prevented." He paused. "Besides, I need help with the ranch and you need a solution. It could benefit us both." Before Zara could respond, the church bells rang, signaling the end of service. People would soon fill the streets. "The town meeting is at 2 o'clock, she said. "Come to the miller's cottage at noon, meet the children, and we'll discuss your proposal further." Preston replaced his hat. "I'll be there, Miss Griffith." As he walked away, Zara wondered if she was placing her trust in yet another person who would ultimately betray her. But the alternative, losing the children to the orphan trains, was unthinkable. When Preston arrived at the miller's cottage promptly at noon, the children regarded him with open suspicion. Billy positioned himself protectively between the newcomer and his siblings, his young face set in determination. "Children, this is Deputy Marshal Foster," Zara introduced him. "He's here to help us." "Are you going to make us leave?" Jack asked bluntly. Preston crouched to the boy's level. "No, son. I'm hoping to help you stay together, right here in Wyoming." Over a simple meal of bean soup and cornbread, Preston explained his idea in terms the children could understand. They would all move to his ranch, where the children could have proper beds and enough food. Zara would continue teaching them, and when they were older they could learn ranching if they wished. "And you and Miss Griffith are getting married?" Emma asked, wide-eyed. Zara and Preston exchanged glances. "We're considering it," Preston answered carefully. "For now, we're going to tell people we're engaged. It will help convince the town council to let you stay." "It's not a real engagement," Zara clarified, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Billy, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "You're lying to people so we can stay together." "Sometimes," Preston said gravely, "protecting those you care about means making difficult choices." The boy considered this, then nodded. "I want us to stay together." As they prepared to attend the town meeting, Zara felt a flutter of nervous anticipation. Their plan was built on deception, but the stakes were too high for moral quibbling. She pinned her best brooch to her collar and smoothed her hair, trying to look respectable despite the whispers that had followed her for months. The town hall was packed when they arrived. Preston's hand at her elbow steadied her as they entered, drawing curious stares. Wallace Hemsley, a bull of a man with a red face and imperious manner, gavelled the meeting to order. "First matter of business is the Thompson orphans," he announced, eyeing Zara coldly. "The council has voted to contact the Children's Aid Society in Denver. These children will be placed on the next orphan train east." Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Zara's heart pounded as she stood. "Mr. Hemsley, I'd like to address the council." Hemsley's mouth tightened. "Miss Griffith, this matter is decided." "Actually," Preston said, rising beside her, "I believe the lady has the right to speak, and as the new deputy marshal for this county, I'd like to hear what she has to say." A hush fell over the room. Hemsley's face darkened, but he couldn't openly defy a federal officer. "Make it brief, Miss Griffith." Zara took a steadying breath. "The Thompson children belong in Medicine Bow. They've suffered enough loss without being shipped thousands of miles away to strangers." She glanced at Preston, drawing strength from his reassuring nod. "Deputy Marshal Foster and I plan to marry next month. We'll be taking the children to live at his ranch, where they'll have proper care and education." The announcement caused an uproar. Mrs. Thornton clutched her chest in exaggerated shock. Mr. Dawson let out a low whistle. Hemsley pounded his gavel for order. "This is highly irregular," he sputtered. "We have no proof of this engagement, and Miss Griffith has already demonstrated her disregard for this council's authority." Preston stepped forward, the picture of frontier respectability. "Mr. Hemsley, I understand your concerns. I've purchased the MacGregor property and am establishing a horse ranch. I'm a taxpayer and business owner in this community now." His hand found Zara's, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. "Miss Griffith has done nothing but show Christian charity to orphan children. I admire her deeply for it. We plan to provide these children with a stable home and family." "And if we refuse?" Hemsley challenged. "Then I'll be forced to telegraph the federal marshal's office in Cheyenne about the denial of basic rights to orphaned American children," Preston replied pleasantly, but with steel beneath his words. "I'm sure they'd be interested in reviewing all of Medicine Bow's municipal decisions over the past few years." The implied threat hung in the air. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Judge Parker, a thin man with spectacles who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we've been hasty. If Deputy Foster and Miss Griffith are willing to take legal responsibility for these children, it would save the town considerable expense." He looked pointedly at Hemsley. "And avoid unwanted scrutiny from Cheyenne." After heated debate, the council voted by a narrow margin to grant temporary guardianship to Preston and Zara, conditional upon their marriage within 30 days. As they left the town hall, Zara felt both triumph and trepidation. They had won a reprieve, but now they faced a new challenge, living together under false pretenses. The next morning, Preston arrived with his wagon to move Zara and the children to the ranch. The MacGregor place sat nestled against rolling hills 5 miles south of town, a weathered 2-story house with a spacious barn and corral. As they approached, Zara noted the peeling paint and sagging porch, but also the sturdy foundation and beautiful setting. "It needs work," Preston admitted as he helped her down from the wagon, his hand warm against hers. "But it's sound." The children tumbled out after them, running to explore with excited shouts. For the first time in months, they looked like children again, not frightened survivors. Inside, the house was sparsely furnished but clean. Preston had clearly been preparing for their arrival. The main floor held a kitchen, dining room, and parlor, while upstairs were 4 bedrooms. "I thought the girls could share, and the boys too," Preston explained, showing her the rooms with fresh linens on the beds. "This room would be yours." He opened a door to a pleasant bedroom with a patchwork quilt and simple dresser. "I'll take the small room off the kitchen." "You're giving up the master bedroom?" Zara asked, surprised. "It seemed right that you should have it." He hesitated. "Miss Griffith, Zara, I want you to know that I respect you and your position. This arrangement is for the children, and I won't presume anything more." The sincerity in his voice touched her. "Thank you, Mr. Foster," Preston please. "If we're supposedly engaged, you should probably use my given name." A small smile curved her lips. "Preston, then." That evening, after the children were settled into their new beds, marveling at having real mattresses and warm blankets, Zara and Preston sat at the kitchen table, planning their next steps. "We need to make this engagement look convincing," Preston said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "People are already suspicious. What do you suggest? A proper courtship would take months. We'll say we corresponded before I came to Medicine Bow, that we met briefly in Cheyenne last year and have been writing since." He looked thoughtful. "It's common enough." "Many marriages out here start that way." Zara nodded. "It was a plausible story. And the wedding, we have 30 days. We could actually do it, you know. A marriage in name only for the children's sake." His eyes held hers, serious and intent. "Unless you had other plans for your future." The question caught her off guard. Once, she had dreamed of love and a family of her own, but those dreams had faded during her years of teaching. And now, with her reputation in tatters. "I had no particular prospects," she said carefully. "But marriage is a serious commitment, even one entered into for practical reasons." Preston nodded. "I understand. We have time to decide. For now, we focus on making this home work for all of us." The next weeks fell into a pattern. Preston rose before dawn to work with his small herd of horses, while Zara prepared breakfast and organized lessons for the children. In the afternoons, while she taught, Preston worked on repairs to the house and outbuildings. Evenings were spent together around the table, sharing meals and stories. To Zara's surprise, Preston proved to be patient and kind with the children. He taught Billy how to groom the horses and showed Jack how to whittle simple figures from wood. He listened to the twins' endless questions with genuine interest. Slowly, the wariness in the children's eyes gave way to trust, and despite her determination to keep emotional distance, Zara found herself warming to Preston. He was unlike any man she'd known, strong but gentle, confident yet humble. He never spoke down to her or dismissed her opinions. Instead, he sought her counsel on matters concerning the ranch and the children. 2 weeks after moving to the ranch, they took the children into town for supplies. It was their first public appearance as an engaged couple, and Zara felt the weight of scrutiny as they entered Dawson's store. Mrs. Thornton was there with her sewing circle friends, eyeing them speculatively. Preston, seemingly oblivious to their stares, placed his hand at the small of Zara's back, guiding her through the store with natural familiarity. "How are the wedding plans coming along, Mrs.?" Dawson asked kindly as she wrapped parcels of sugar and coffee. "We're thinking something simple," Preston answered before Zara could speak. "Just family and a few friends." "At the ranch," Mrs. Dawson pressed. Preston glanced at Zara, his eyes asking a silent question. She nodded slightly. "Yes, at the ranch," he confirmed. 2 weeks from Saturday." As they loaded their purchases into the wagon, Mrs. Thornton approached, her face pinched with disapproval. "Miss Griffith, I feel compelled to warn you. People are talking about how quickly this engagement happened. Some wonder if there might be improper reasons for such haste." The insinuation was clear. Zara felt her cheeks burn with indignation, but Preston spoke before she could defend herself. "Mrs. Thornton, I appreciate your concern for Miss Griffith's reputation," he said, his voice pleasant but firm. "But I assure you, our relationship is built on mutual respect and shared values. We simply see no reason to delay building our life together." He helped Zara into the wagon, then turned back to Mrs. Thornton. "We'd be honored if you and Mr. Thornton would attend our wedding. 2 weeks from Saturday at the ranch." The woman blinked in surprise. "Well, we'll see if our schedule permits." As they drove away, Zara couldn't suppress a laugh. "You've left her quite speechless." Preston grinned. "Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Besides, now we really do need to have a wedding." The realization sobered her. "Yes, I suppose we do." That night, after the children were asleep, Preston found Zara on the front porch, wrapped in a shawl against the spring chill. The moon silvered the landscape, casting long shadows across the yard. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, joining her on the porch swing. "I'm thinking about what we're doing," she admitted. "This deception. Is it right, even for a good cause?" Preston was silent for a moment. "My pa used to say that the measure of a person is what they're willing to sacrifice for those who need them. You were willing to sacrifice your reputation and position to help these children. That says something important about your character. And what about you? What are you sacrificing?" He looked out at the moonlit hills. "Maybe some notion of how my life would unfold. But I'm gaining a family of sorts, aren't I? That's no small thing for a man who's been on his own since he was 16. The gentle creak of the swing punctuated the silence between them. Zara studied his profile, struck by how comfortable she felt in his presence. "Tell me about your life before Medicine Bow," she said softly. And so he did. He told her about growing up in Texas, losing his parents to a flash flood, being taken in by a rancher who worked him hard but taught him about horses. He told her about leaving at 16 to make his own way, working as a ranch hand, then a scout for the Army, and finally joining the Marshal's service. "What about you?" he asked when he'd finished. "What led you to teaching, and to risking everything for 4 orphans?" Zara told him about her childhood in Ohio, her father's death when she was 12, and her mother's struggle to raise 3 daughters alone. She'd come west at 20 to teach, seeking adventure and independence. "I've always had a soft spot for children who have lost their parents," she confessed. "And when I saw how frightened the Thompson children were, how the council wanted to separate them, I couldn't stand by and do nothing." Preston's hand found hers on the swing between them. "That's why I want to help them too," he said quietly. "We've both seen what happens to children who have no one to stand for them." His touch was warm, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. For a moment, Zara allowed herself to imagine this was real, that they were truly engaged, planning a life together built on more than practical necessity. "Preston," she began hesitantly, "if we go through with this wedding, what happens later? What if one of us meets someone we truly want to marry?" He considered the question seriously. "We could get a quiet annulment someday if that happens. Or—" he paused, looking down at their joined hands. "Or maybe we'll find that this arrangement suits us well enough." The implication hung in the air between them. Zara's heart beat faster, but she couldn't bring herself to explore what he might mean. Instead, she gently withdrew her hand. "It's getting late. We should both get some rest." He nodded, respecting her retreat. "Good night, Zara." As she lay in bed that night, Zara wondered if she was making a terrible mistake or embarking on the most courageous adventure of her life. Either way, in less than 2 weeks, she would be Mrs. Preston Foster, if only in name. The days leading up to the wedding passed in a flurry of preparations. Preston hired a carpenter from town to help with urgent repairs, while Zara sewed new curtains and transformed the sparse house into a home. The children threw themselves into preparations with enthusiasm, especially the girls, who were thrilled at the prospect of a wedding. Word spread through Medicine Bow, and to Zara's surprise, the community's attitude began to shift. Mrs. Dawson organized a small group of women to help with wedding preparations. They brought food, offers of assistance, and cautious acceptance. Even Mrs. Thornton unbent enough to present Zara with a hand-embroidered tablecloth as a wedding gift. 3 days before the wedding, Judge Parker rode out to the ranch to discuss the legal aspects of their guardianship of the children. "Once you're married," he explained, seated in their parlor, "you can file formal adoption papers if you wish. It would make your guardianship permanent." Preston looked at Zara, his expression unreadable. "We'll discuss it after the wedding." That night, they sat at the kitchen table after the children were asleep, sharing a pot of tea. "You want to adopt them formally?" Zara asked, broaching the subject that had hung between them all day. Preston traced the rim of his cup with his finger. "I do. They deserve stability to know they won't be uprooted again." He met her eyes. "But it should be your decision, too. This affects your future as much as mine." "What if—" she hesitated. "What if our arrangement doesn't work out? If we decide to end it someday, what happens to the children?" "We could stipulate in the adoption papers that regardless of our marital status, we both remain their legal guardians." His eyes held her steadily. "I would never keep them from you, Zara, no matter what happens between us." His sincerity touched her deeply. "Then yes, I think we should adopt them." Preston smiled, relief evident in his expression. "Good, that's good." An awkward silence fell between them. There was another matter they hadn't discussed: the physical aspects of marriage. They had agreed this would be a marriage in name only, but they hadn't spoken about the practical details. "About the wedding night," Preston said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "I want you to know that I meant what I said. I won't expect. That is, I understand this is a practical arrangement." Color rose in Zara's cheeks. "Thank you. I'll make up a bed in the study," he continued. "For appearance's sake, we should share the master bedroom when we have visitors, but otherwise—" "Yes, that seems sensible," she agreed, staring into her tea. Preston cleared his throat. "Zara, I hope someday you might consider, that is, I find myself—" He stopped, seeming uncharacteristically flustered. "I just want you to know that I respect you enormously. And I'll do my best to be a good husband, even if it's not a conventional marriage." Something in his tone made her look up. The warmth in his eyes caused a flutter in her chest that she tried to ignore. "I know you will," she said softly, "and I'll try to be a good wife." The day of the wedding dawned clear and mild, a perfect spring Saturday. Zara stood in her bedroom, wearing the dress Mrs. Dawson had helped her alter, her best blue dress with cream lace at the collar and cuffs. It wasn't a proper wedding gown, but it was the finest thing she owned. Emma and Eliza burst into the room, already dressed in their new pinafores, flowers woven into their braids. "You look beautiful, Miss Griffith," Emma exclaimed. "Soon you'll be Mrs. Foster," Eliza added, eyes wide. "Will we call you Mother then?" The question caught Zara by surprise. "Would you like to?" The twins exchanged glances. "Could we?" Eliza asked hopefully. "We don't remember our real mother very well anymore." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. "If you want to, yes, I would be honored." The girls threw their arms around her waist. Zara held them close, realizing that regardless of how this unusual marriage had come about, she already loved these children as her own. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Mrs. Dawson peeked in. "It's time, dear. Everyone's waiting." Downstairs, the parlor had been transformed. Spring wildflowers adorned every surface, and the furniture had been rearranged to create an aisle of sorts. Nearly 30 people had arrived, more than Zara had expected, including families from town she barely knew. Billy and Jack waited at the foot of the stairs, looking uncomfortable but proud in their new shirts. "You look real pretty, Miss Griffith," Jack said shyly. Billy offered his arm with solemn dignity. "I asked Mr. Foster if I could give you away since your pa isn't here. He said it was a fine idea." Touched beyond words, Zara took his arm. The boy was only 12 but carried himself like a young man today, his shoulders straight and chin high. As they entered the parlor, the assembled guests rose. At the far end, beside the stone fireplace, stood Preston and Reverend Collins from the town church. Preston wore a dark suit she'd never seen before, his hair neatly combed, freshly shaved. But it was his expression that caught her breath. He was looking at her with such warmth and admiration that for a moment she could almost believe this was a real wedding born of love. Billy led her down the makeshift aisle. When they reached Preston, the boy solemnly placed her hand in the man's larger one. "Take good care of her," Billy said, his voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I will," Preston promised, his eyes never leaving Zara's. "You have my word." The ceremony was simple and brief. They exchanged plain gold bands Preston had purchased in town. When Reverend Collins pronounced them husband and wife, Preston hesitated only briefly before leaning down to place a gentle kiss on her lips there first. It was chaste and quick, but Zara felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with embarrassment. The celebration afterward was lively, with plenty of food brought by the townspeople and music provided by Mr. Harris on his fiddle. As the afternoon wore on, Zara found herself genuinely enjoying the gathering, touched by the community's apparent acceptance. Mrs. Thornton approached as Zara was serving cake to the children. "Well, Mrs. Foster," she said, the name sounding strange to Zara's ears. "It seems you've landed on your feet after all." Before Zara could respond, Preston appeared at her side, his hand settling naturally at her waist. "I'm the fortunate one, Mrs. Thornton. My wife is an extraordinary woman." The possessive touch and the sincere admiration in his voice sent a flutter through Zara's stomach. This pretense was becoming dangerously convincing, even to herself. As evening approached, the guests gradually departed, leaving behind good wishes and enough leftover food to feed them for days. The children, exhausted from excitement, went to bed without protest. Finally, Zara and Preston were alone, standing awkwardly in the kitchen amid the remnants of the celebration. "Well, Mrs. Foster," Preston said, echoing Mrs. Thornton's earlier address, "we did it." "Yes, we did." She twisted the unfamiliar ring on her finger. "Thank you for today. It was nicer than I expected." "You looked beautiful," he said simply. "I meant to tell you earlier." Heat rose in her cheeks. "Thank you." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Finally, Preston cleared his throat. I've made up the study for myself. I'll just say good night then." He hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Good night, Zara." "Good night, husband," she replied, testing the word. A smile touched his lips before he turned away. Alone in the master bedroom, Zara changed into her nightgown and sat at the small vanity, brushing her hair. She studied her reflection, wondering if she looked any different now that she was a married woman. The situation was bizarre, married to a man she barely knew for the sake of 4 orphan children, yet somehow it felt right. Spring turned to summer, and life at the Foster ranch fell into a pleasant rhythm. Preston's horse business began to flourish as his reputation for quality stock spread. Zara continued teaching the children and started a small vegetable garden. On Sundays, they attended church in town as a family, gradually becoming accepted members of the community. To all outward appearances, they were a normal, happy family. Preston and Zara maintained separate sleeping quarters, but they worked together seamlessly during the day, their partnership growing more natural with each passing week. They filed the adoption papers, officially becoming parents to all 4 Thompson children. One warm July evening, as they sat on the porch after the children were asleep, Preston broached a subject they'd been avoiding. "Billy asked me today why I never kiss you except on the forehead," he said, staring out at the darkening landscape. "The children are starting to notice that ours isn't a typical marriage." Zara's hand stilled in her mending. "What did you tell him?" "I said that adults show affection in different ways and that not all of it is visible." He turned to look at her. "But it got me thinking, Zara. We've been married nearly 2 months now. This arrangement. Is it what you want? Are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. She set her sewing aside, considering her answer carefully. "I'm content. The children are thriving, the ranch is doing well. You've been nothing but respectful and kind." "That's not what I asked," he said gently. "Are you happy?" Was she? Zara had to admit that life with Preston was better than she could have imagined. She enjoyed their conversations, his dry humor, the way he listened when she spoke. She admired his patience with the children and his dedication to his work. And sometimes, when he stood close or their hands touched accidentally, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with contentment. "I think I am," she said slowly. "But I wonder if someday you might regret this arrangement." "You're a good man, Preston. You deserve a real marriage, a wife who—" "I don't regret anything," he interrupted. "Except perhaps that I haven't been honest with you." He took a deep breath. "When I proposed this arrangement, I told you it was just for the children." That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Zara's heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" "I noticed you the first day I arrived in Medicine Bow, a beautiful woman hurrying through town with a basket, ignoring the whispers around her. I asked about you before I even knew about the children. When I learned what you were doing, how you'd sacrificed your position to help those orphans, I admired you before I even spoke to you." He moved closer on the porch swing, taking her hand in his. "These past 2 months, getting to know you, seeing your kindness, your strength, your intelligence." "Zara, this may have started as a practical arrangement, but my feelings have become very real." She stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Preston, you don't need to say anything," he assured her quickly. "I don't expect you to feel the same. I just wanted you to know that for me, this isn't just pretend anymore." Zara looked down at their joined hands, his large and tanned against her smaller one. Slowly, she raised her eyes to his. "It's not pretend for me either, not anymore." The hope that blazed in his eyes took her breath away. "Zara, are you saying I'm saying that I've grown to care for you deeply?" she admitted. "I didn't expect it. I tried not to let it happen, but—" Preston's free hand came up to cup her cheek. "May I kiss you properly this time?" At her nod, he leaned forward, his lips meeting hers in a tender kiss that quickly deepened with months of unspoken longing. When they finally parted, both breathless, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Zara Foster. I think I have since that first day in town." Tears pricked her eyes. "And I love you, Preston Foster, my husband in more than just name." That night, for the first time, they truly shared the master bedroom, their marriage becoming real in every sense. As Zara drifted to sleep in Preston's arms, she marveled at the strange path that had led her here, cast out by her community for helping orphans, only to find a partner who said, "Let's help them together," and in doing so, had given her the family she'd always wanted. Autumn arrived with golden light and crisp mornings. The children thrived under Zara and Preston's care, Billy showing a natural talent with horses, Jack discovering a love for building things, and the twins blossoming in their studies. The Foster Ranch became known not just for its fine horses, but for its warm hospitality. On a bright October morning, Zara woke feeling unusually queasy. She dismissed it as a passing illness, but when the same nausea returned the next 3 mornings, she could no longer ignore what it might mean. Counting back the weeks, she realized her monthly cycle was overdue. She kept the suspicion to herself for another week, until Preston found her retching behind the barn one morning. "Zara, you're ill," he said, his face creased with concern as he held back her hair. "We should send for the doctor." When she straightened, wiping her mouth, she couldn't help the smile that spread across her face despite her discomfort. "I don't think a doctor is necessary, Preston, not for this condition." It took him a moment to understand. When he did, his eyes widened. "Are you saying?" She nodded. "I think so. I haven't been certain enough to tell you," but he swept her into his arms, spinning her around with a whoop of joy that startled the nearby horses. "A baby, our baby." His uninhibited happiness erased any lingering doubts Zara might have had about their unconventional beginning. This was real, their love, their family, and now the new life they had created together. Dr. Wilson confirmed the pregnancy the following week. "Early April, I'd say," he told them. "Everything appears healthy, Mrs. Foster." As they drove back to the ranch, Preston couldn't stop smiling. "The children will be excited. They've been asking when they might get a little brother or sister." "They have." This was news to Zara. Preston nodded. "Billy asked me last month if we might consider adding to our family someday. I told him it was in God's hands, but that we'd welcome it if it happened." He glanced at her. "I hope that was all right." She squeezed his hand. "More than all right." The children reacted to the news with varying degrees of enthusiasm. The twins were ecstatic, already planning all the things they would teach the baby. Jack was curious about the practical aspects, asking where the baby would sleep and how small it would be. Billy, now 13 and increasingly aware of adult matters, simply gave Zara a gentle hug and told her he'd help more with chores so she could rest. As winter settled over Medicine Bow, bringing snow and long evenings by the fire, Zara reflected on the remarkable changes of the past year. From an ostracized schoolteacher living in a crumbling cottage with 4 orphans, she had become a respected rancher's wife, adoptive mother to those same children, and now expecting a child of her own. "What are you thinking about?" Preston asked one evening as they sat by the fire, his hand resting protectively on her slightly rounded belly. "How strange life can be," she replied. "A year ago, I was so afraid for the children's future and my own. Now look at us." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Best decision I ever made, walking into that general store and introducing myself to the stubborn woman who was defying the entire town." She laughed. "I thought you were there to arrest me. I was there to marry you. I just didn't know it yet." The winter passed peacefully. Preston added onto the house, building a proper nursery adjacent to their bedroom. Zara knitted tiny garments in the evenings while Preston read aloud from favorite books. The children thrived in school. Even Billy, who had initially resisted formal education, discovered a talent for mathematics that surprised everyone. As Zara's pregnancy progressed, the community that had once shunned her now embraced her fully. Mrs. Thornton herself organized a baby shower, bringing women from all over the county to the Foster ranch bearing gifts and advice for the expectant mother. "You've proven us all wrong," Mrs. Thornton admitted privately to Zara during the gathering. "Those children couldn't have found a better home. And Preston Foster couldn't have found a better wife." Coming from the woman who had been her harshest critic, the words meant more than all the baby blankets and booties combined. On a blustery April morning, just as the first wildflowers were beginning to dot the prairie, Zara went into labor. Preston sent Billy galloping into town for the doctor and Mrs. Dawson, who had promised to help with the birth. The other children were sent to stay with neighbors. The labor was long and difficult. By nightfall, Zara was exhausted, her strength flagging as the contractions intensified. Preston refused to leave her side, wiping her brow and murmuring encouragement even as concern darkened his eyes. "You're the strongest woman I know," he told her, holding her hand as another pain gripped her. "You can do this, my love." Just before midnight, with a final tremendous effort, Zara brought their son into the world, a healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and a lusty cry that filled the bedroom. "A boy," Dr. Wilson announced, cleaning and wrapping the infant. "A fine son for you, Deputy Foster." Preston's eyes shone with tears as he took the tiny bundle. "He's perfect," he whispered, placing the baby in Zara's arms, "just like his mother." Exhausted but radiant, Zara gazed down at their child. "Hello, Samuel," she said softly, using the name they had chosen for a boy after Preston's father. "Welcome to our family." The next morning, Preston brought the children home to meet their new brother. They crowded around Zara's bed, their faces awestruck at the tiny, perfect features of the newborn. "He's so small," Jack marveled. "He has your hair, Pa," Billy observed, using the term he'd gradually adopted for Preston over the past months. Emmer reached out a tentative finger to touch the baby's cheek. "Can I hold him, please?" Under Zara's watchful eye, each child took a turn carefully holding their new brother. As Zara watched her family, these 5 precious children, and the man who had made it all possible, she felt a completeness she had never imagined possible when she first defied the town council to protect 4 orphaned siblings. By summer, life at the Foster Ranch had adjusted to include little Samuel. Preston's horse business continued to prosper, allowing them to hire additional help, including a young widow named Clara, who assisted Zara with household duties and childcare. The original Thompson children thrived in their stable environment, gradually healing from their early traumas. On a warm August evening, exactly 1 year after their wedding, Preston surprised Zara with a special dinner after the children were asleep. "What's the occasion?" she asked as he poured her a glass of wine. He smiled, reaching into his pocket. "I have something for you." He placed a small velvet box on the table. Inside was a delicate gold ring set with a perfect pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "Preston, it's beautiful, but why, when we married," he explained, taking the ring and sliding it onto her finger above her plain gold band. "It was a practical arrangement. You deserved a proper courtship, a romantic proposal, a ring chosen with love. I can't change how we began, but I wanted to give you this now as a symbol of the real love that grew between us." Tears filled her eyes. "Our beginning may have been unusual, but I wouldn't change a thing. It brought us here, didn't it?" He leaned across the table to kiss her. It did. And here is exactly where I want to be. Later that night, standing on the porch under a canopy of stars, Preston wrapped his arms around Zara from behind, both of them gazing out at the land that had become their home. You ever think about how differently things might have turned out? He asked. If I hadn't come to Medicine Bow when I did, if you hadn't been so determined to protect those children. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I look at our life together, and I think perhaps it was always meant to be this way. Perhaps we were always meant to find each other. Preston turned her in his arms to face him. You were cast out for helping orphans. I said, let's help them together. And in helping them, we found each other. And built a family, she added, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. A family, he agreed, holding her close. The most precious thing in the world. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the Wyoming sky, a fleeting silver trail against the velvet darkness. Zara made a silent wish of gratitude for the brave decision that had cost her so much, and given her everything: a husband who loved her, 5 children to cherish, and a life fuller and richer than any she could have imagined when she first defied convention to protect 4 orphaned souls. In the distance, a coyote called, its lonely song rising to meet the stars. But here, on the porch of the Foster ranch, there was no loneliness, only the warm certainty of love that had grown from the most unexpected beginning, proving that sometimes the greatest journeys start with a single act of courage.